Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, hello. Good to see you all in the room. Please take a seat if you don't have a seat yet. I think there are still a few left. So a very warm welcome, and I've been really looking forward to this. I must tell you, it's the first time I'm in this beautiful country. I arrived on Saturday, and I had the chance to take a look at the beauties of Samarkand. My name is Dimitrios Dosis, and I look after Mastercard's business across Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I got told to call out a few logistics for the room, which is a simultaneous interpretation introduction. So as a reminder, there is a translation, English, Russian, and Uzbek available on your headphones. Just do the interaction app on the watching online, and here are the details on the screen. Are they coming? They're not coming yet, but they will come. Excellent. So I'm really pleased to be here today because we'll talk about a topic which is very dear to my heart and to my distinct, let's say, panelists' hearts. It's about financial inclusion, and it's about how digital innovation can help financial inclusion. I mean, think about this. End of last year, we had a third of the adult population globally not being banked. We're talking about 1.7 billion. That is huge. Okay. Now, 50% of this 1.7 billion are women and small and medium entrepreneurs in, let's say, rural areas. So it's a big problem. Okay. Now, but it's not only about being unbanked financially. It's more than that. Okay. It's about the women garment worker who needs to manage her hardly earned salary better, have control over it. That is financial inclusion. It is about the small and medium enterprises and try to really give them access into the financial system. And access is not an easy thing. It's not only about money. We have EBRD today, so it's great to get the money, but the question is, how do we then put the money into the SME's hand? We need to know them. We need to have a possibility to give them a credit score so the banks like you can provide them funding. Okay? That's why this is also financial inclusion, providing needs to SMEs. But it's also about the Uzbekistan worker sitting in Dubai and trying to send money, hard-earned money, back to Uzbekistan. You know what? I just moved 2 years ago to Dubai, and if I go to those shopping malls, I see those long lines at those exchange houses. They wait under the burning sun, and then they go and pay their salaries and have to pay 8, 9, 10% of fees for remittances. That's a ripoff. It's not good for our industry, guys, and it's not good for the people. So solving for this is also financial inclusion. That's why I'm so passionate about this topic. That's why it matters. And on that note, allow me to introduce my distinct panelists today. So with me today, we have Mrs. Umut Shayakhmetova, I hope I pronounced it correctly, CEO of Halyk Bank in Kazakhstan. Thank you for being with us today, Umut. We also have Mr. Umid Khakimov, CEO of Asia Alliance Bank. Thank you for being with us, Umid, today. And we also have Mr. Francis Malige, Managing Director from the EBRD. So let's have a great discussion, and please be interactive, guys, okay? This session is only as good as you're interactive. So I'll be asking you questions. You can post questions here, and if you don't ask questions, I'll go around the room and ask for questions, okay? That's the way we'll handle this. So on that note, Umut, you're leading Halyk Bank, which is one of the most successful banks across Central Asia, not only in Kazakhstan, but also here in Uzbekistan. You have been a really good partner of Mastercard for this last few years, and I personally think you have done a tremendous job in bringing unbanked people into the financial system. Could you explain a little bit to us the activities of scope you have done around that topic in your bank?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for inviting me to this very interesting event. And I'm really impressed by the level and by the organization of EBRD and Uzbek authorities and how many people they could organize here in Samarkand. Well, yes, if we talk today about the banking services and financial services, for banks, it's not enough today just have a capital and being able to provide lending to our clients. Especially in Kazakhstan, the level of development of financial services is very high, and clients are more demanding and demanding. And in Kazakhstan, it's not enough just to have a capital, as I said, and just to have liquidity. You have to provide very high level of digitalization of banking services, financial services, Already today in our banking applications, we include not only banking or payment services, but also lifestyle services like buying tickets to cinemas, insurance, brokerage services, and leasing, telecom services, and much more. We, being the biggest financial institution in the region and having the highest level of ratings in the whole post-CIS region as well, we have this experience working in different markets, and we see that different countries, they face different issues regarding the inclusivity, as you said, of the banking services, regarding the provision of these banking services. Maybe I will talk a little bit about the high level of our group, and then I can share my experience working in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and Tajikistan. These are the markets where we were present till the end of last year, and we sold our Russian and Tajikistan subsidiary, and now we are present in 4 countries. So I can, okay. Which one? Okay.
There we go.
So if we talk about Halyk Group, as I said, we are the leading financial group in the whole region. And on the next slide, you just see our group of companies which are included into our Halyk Group. So we have we are present in 4 countries. It's Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Georgia, and Kyrgyzstan. We have joint venture with China CITIC Group in Kazakhstan. The name is Altyn Bank, and 60% of this bank belongs to China CITIC Corporation, and 40% to Halyk Bank. We also have insurance, life insurance, brokerage, Kasteleport. This is the telecommunication company, financial services company. This is more on processing and acquiring services, leasing, and some other companies. If we talk on the numbers, then at the end of last year, our total assets were $31.4 billion. The equity is around $5 billion, and the net profit of $1.2 billion of the net profit. As I said, we have the highest ratings, and these are at the level of our sovereign Kazakh ratings. And we are also traded at London Stock Exchange from 2006. We are the oldest IPO Kazakh company in London, and more than 30% belongs to international investors. It's a big American and Western Europe, Asian funds. Today, as I said, it's not enough just to be the bank. It's, you have to be very competitive, and especially in Kazakhstan, to be successful, where our clients are very demanded and even spoiled by cashbacks, by the bonuses which banks are providing, by the very easy services which are just available in 2 clicks. Very easy account opening. You don't have to come to the bank. You just have to open through, you can open it through the digital channels. We see that, and this is what we do. We develop our 2 main applications. One is for retail clients, another one is for corporate and SME. We are not a mono bank. We are a universal bank, and we are working with the big corporates, national companies, multinational companies in Kazakhstan. We work with SME, and more than 50% of the total lending to real economy in Kazakhstan is provided by Halyk Bank. And as well, we have more than 9 million retail clients. And as I said, you have to be very well developed digitally. You have to be very well in front in order to have, as you said, being able to reach each client, to be able to provide these financial services to our clients in a very far rural areas. So in our super app, Halyk Home Bank, we have not only payment services, it's also all the treasury services, it's QR payments, P2P payments, It's, as I said, insurance, life insurance, availability of buying insurance. Investment, it's online brokerage, which again, you don't have to come to the bank, you just open it through the application. It's also lifestyle services as a Kino KZ and Halyk Market. This is e-commerce platform. On a corporate side, we provide through our online bank application. Again, it's B2B payments, 24 hours, 7 days per week. If you're a client of Halyk Bank, you can do everything inside of the bank. It's, again, acquiring interchange services. It's a lending, of course, and leasing, insurance, cash collection, and also the telecom services as well. We are very paying a lot of attention on ESG, and we are the first bank in the region who received the international rating on our ESG standards. We are the first company which we became the first bank in Kazakhstan to join the UN Global Compact principles and the organization. So, and this is where we pay a lot of attention to go and follow on our ESG principles as well, regarding, as you said, the involvement of minorities as a clients of the bank and working with all the segments of population in Kazakhstan. Just the numbers that at the end of first quarter 2023, we have the monthly active users of our application for retail clients 6.2 million people, and for daily active users is almost 9 million people per day. For the corporate as well, you see that during just 5 quarters, the number of usage of our clients grew by 50%, and today it's 440,000 legal entities who are using our online bank application.
That's huge. And can I ask you on this one, these include SMEs, right?
Yes.
And let's say those SMEs, did you also help to train them? Because it's just unique to have that type of penetration, because probably they didn't know about this product, right?
Yes, of course. You have to train. We have the widest network in Kazakhstan. We have more than 570 branches, and we work through different channels, either physically or mostly we develop the database fabric in the bank, and it's more personalized offers to each client, which you can offer different products and services to the client base.
Okay.
Last year we introduced brokerage services. Again, it's fully digital. And it was very successful through the IPO of Kazmunaygas. This is our national company, oil and gas company, which was made IPO at the end of last year, and more than 70% of the total retail clients could buy shares of Kazmunaygas through our application, just in 2-3 clicks. And the same, it's not again only Kazmunaygas, but this IPO was very successful because of Halyk Bank participation, and we were offering these services to population, to people. Again, we think that the government digital services are very important for population to be able to attract all the social payments, pension payments, some other social benefits. And Halyk Bank is the #1 bank in terms of the number of services. So it's 42 different services which we are able to provide on a state digital services. And in the first quarter, more than 3 million times our clients were using these state services through our bank.
Is there an alternative to use the state service also offline, or is it only through an app? I mean, is this something which mandated?
No, it's not mandated. It's you can also use offline, but you have to go to the state point of service.
Okay, so there's much better convenience to use the digital solution for.
Yeah, you can even have today the marriage registration through our application.
Okay, very good.
And we are the only bank who provides this service in the country. It's like car legalization, real estate registration, all the different statements of state documents, e-documents, everything is available in our service. And when the COVID, also application to be able to go to different...
it was also on that application?
Yes, it's also here in this application. The same if we talk about the business, again, this is the different services which we can provide to our SME and big corporates. As I already said and mentioned, it's all the financial products, it's SWIFT payments, it's treasury operations, it's I don't know, automotive cash machines where you just have to have just QR code, and there are big cash machines where you can bring or take cash from bank. So the digital tender guarantees, we are also today the biggest bank in terms of the tender guarantees for our clients. If we talk about Uzbekistan, then we established here our subsidiary in May 2019. Then we already today providing, we are one of the biggest corporate bank on the lending side, but we do provide this lending through our head office and also through our subsidiary here. We are also working with SMEs and retail clients. We have developed here the different products which are opening during these 3 years. It's Halyk Life Insurance, general insurance company. We established Custody Report. This is the company which is providing data services, data center here in Uzbekistan. We are opened the Tenge market. This is e-commerce application, and also FinService. It's processing and e-pay services. The same on Tenge Bank here in Uzbekistan. We have also one high international credit ratings. This is our total assets and the portfolio. As I said, this is portfolio only from the local balance sheet, but if you add up from the head office, it's more than $500 million, which we already provide financing here in Uzbekistan. And we opened applications for retail clients. We also work here on digitalization of our services. Again, as you said, to be able to provide financial services to and make a maximum inclusion of the clients here in Uzbekistan, because we do not plan to go and open the same big number of branches in Uzbekistan as we do in Kazakhstan. So it's mostly the attraction through the digital services. And we just started at the end of last year, and already today we have 290,000 retail clients during the fourth quarter on a monthly active users. And the same we have for the legal entities as well on web application. But again, if we talk about why the financial institutions can do provide these services, and in Kazakhstan, for example, the growth of digitalization and inclusion of clients and services, you can see that the non-cash payments are growing significantly fast, and in 3 years it increased by 3 times. If in 2020 it was around $84 billion, then in 2022 it's already $226 billion of non-cash transactions. And active cards, we have 32.3 million cards. With total population is 19.7, but again, why so many active cards? Because people have 2, 3, 4 different cards. About the credit portfolio today, 84% of our portfolio is provided online, and out of $28.6 billion of the country's loan portfolio, our part is around $6 billion loan portfolio, which we do provide to the clients. And on deposit side as well, around 70% deposits in Halyk are opened through online. But I would like maybe to stress here how the government role is important in development of the banking industry, and what is expected that the government should, what is the role should be expected that the government should play in this field. And as I said, we are present in many countries in the region, and I can say that depending on the regulation, on legislation, how the infrastructure is prepared, how the internet is well available in the country, what is the quality of the internet, what are the state databases, integration with these state databases is very important to be able to provide those services.
So you guys work very closely with the government to influence and make sure that happens in that regulation. Okay.
And Kazakhstan is in the top 10 countries in the world in terms of the level of the state digital services provision. So we achieved this level during last, I think, 3-5 years. And it's very crucial that the government takes this leading role. Of course, it's together with the private sector, it's public sector, it's telecom companies, it's clients, again, who are very demanding. All together, availability of investments, source of investment, all together plays very successful role. So these are just the example of certain rules and regulations which make possible to grow on the digital services from the state. Today, in Kazakhstan, we have other already issues. It's the fraud, it's cyber security, it's the defense of personal data. And this is already next level of development which we are working together with the government. And as I said, the banks are also playing a leading role. So the banks also should be investing into the different services and into digitalization. So today, for example, we can provide different services like through Halyk QR, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Garmin Pay, and P2P payments. We work very well with international payment system organizations and also developing local payments as I said, as a Halyk QR. Unfortunately, the recent developments in the region make the tendency from globalization to nationalization of markets. And this is what we see happened with Russia situation, Ukraine, and it creates certain risks.
And we've seen it globally in the region, so not only here.
It's also globally. And we see that the risk when international payment systems just can cut provision of the services due to different reasons, puts our local markets into the puts attention of our local markets to the development of local payment systems. But we see that when it's only strong local payment system is not always very competitive. And this is what we face also here in Uzbekistan, that international payment systems, they can provide higher level of development, technology development, like credit cards, for example, provision, or BNPL products, or some other payments. And it's much more difficult to work with the state payment systems because it takes longer time sometimes.
So probably it's getting let's say, the right balance between international solutions and having still domestic sovereignty on payments. I mean, that's what you're saying.
It provides more competition, and it provides more, I think, progress into the development of different ways of payments. And today we're already working on other also ways like using no plastic. And it's like face payment, face ID, touch ID, and P2P transfers, and already, as I said, on different telephone way or watch pay payments. And we see the new tendencies on payment developments, and it's again the credit card story is remaining strong for the demand. It's digital wallet growth, it's account to account. This is also the new technology, which is we see very successful among the legal entities, and it's very demanding from our clients. Other issues like cash decline continues, and we see that cryptocurrencies also tendency how work to the crypto payments and cryptocurrencies is a big challenge today for not only Kazakhstan but also globally. And this is where we're already developing the technology, but the regulation is still needs to be developed. E-commerce, BNPL, as I already mentioned, those are tendencies which we see the next level of development. Okay, Rahmet.
What does Rahmet mean?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have to thank you for giving us this very comprehensive view. So if we stay with private banks, Umid, can you just, let's say, we had a really good example of how a bank helped digitize an economy. I mean, in Kazakhstan, in Uzbekistan, and across. If you can take a step back and say, you know what, these are the challenges and opportunities you would see going forward, because this was so far, but let's say going forward, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges and opportunities you would see?
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Working?
Yes.
So yeah, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for Mastercard for inviting for this session. Really impressive results of Halyk Bank. I would say Uzbekistan is still, let's say, need to get up to speed to get certain levels in this term. I would say government of Uzbekistan taken very, let's say, big steps towards development of the market, you know, also development of the digital infrastructure. I want to say about the decree accepted in 2017 by President of Uzbekistan, number 3620, which was dedicated to, let's say, increase of access to financial services of population, also in rural areas, you know, which is important because in the cities, people more or less familiar with the banking services, financial services, and have access, but in rural areas, it's not the case. World Bank has presented statistics recently that in the last 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, number of people in Uzbekistan having access to financial accounts, at least single accounts, increased from 23% to 44%, which is impressive.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, twice. But as I said, it's still a long way to go in order to, let's say, increase or improve financial literacy of the people, you know. So if you go in the past few years ago, if you go to commercial bank, you could see a lot of queues, a lot of people standing in the queue to make the cash payments or cash withdrawal, financial transaction. Nowadays, most of the people are switching to, let's say, digital payments, you know. People used to use their mobile applications. We have a number of fintechs opened in Uzbekistan, which is good. We have very famous, let's say, payment system, fintech payment systems like Click and PayMe. Apart from them, there are about 50 other companies, you know. Also, each and every commercial bank has their own digital application, like Umut also mentioned, they have own. Agilance Bank also has own, you know. And the volume of digital transactions increased, and by estimation, independent estimation, it will reach $5 billion in 2023, and it's going to reach $9 billion in next 3-4 years, which is also good progress, you know. But at the same time, if we speak about the challenges, what, let's say, limiting people or a market, you know, to develop much more faster, we need to talk about, let's say, financial technologies. We need to talk, first of all, about scarcity of IT staff, you know.
Scarcity of?
IT staff.
IT staff.
IT staff, you know. I mean, each and every bank trying to make a lot of investments into, let's say, IT infrastructure, develop certain applications, but still, you know, as market is developing, you know, the market is huge. We need to train the staff, we need to have good staff in place, you know, who will maintain that services, who will, let's say, deliver and at least fix some issues which are time by time happening, you know. Also, though we have two big, let's say, payment system, Humo and Uzcard, you know, they have healthy competition and they contribute to each other development. At the same time, we sometimes face certain disruptives in the operations, which also, let's say, kind of undermine people's trust to these systems, you know. And people still prefer, some of the people still prefer to keep their savings in, not in the banks, but let's say in gold, in cars, in livestock, you know, in real estate, which is probably not the case also in the neighboring countries, you know.
Yeah.
This is also about financial literacy, you know. We have to train the staff, we have to get a good staff and IT staff in place. And at the same time, as the market is developing, what we see there for the last few years is about cybersecurity, which Umut has also mentioned, you know. We started witnessing that external, let's say, kind of companies or, I don't know, staff, people trying to make certain, let's say, attempts to breach IT systems of the banks and try to steal, you know, or make some fraudulent operations, you know. That's something commercial banks need also, not only private, but also state-owned banks need to focus on, you know, to create the certain security systems and protect the banking and financial systems in general, you know. Yeah. These are the challenges at this period of time.
So let me pick on two of them, because the
Yes.
first one you called out a talent, let's say, problem, because there's not enough talent in the market. I was chatting this morning with Umut. I told her that we're going to build up our office in Tashkent, and I said I want to have people. She said, no, you're not going to get mine. So there's a shortage of really qualified people,
Absolutely.
right, to really have in the office, which I think is also something we need to address from an educational perspective, for number one. And the other one you mentioned is literacy. So that's why I was so impressed by the SME number, because for an SME to sign up to a digital channel, he or she needs to understand it makes sense. So how do you do this literacy level at the last mile when you address the SME here in Uzbekistan?
Well, for us as a commercial bank, you know, we're trying to train our own staff. We invest in our own staff, you know, so we organize trainings, we send them abroad, you know.
Yeah.
So we try to connect to experts, you know. But I would say it's very challenging, you know, because on the market we see many new banks are opening, you know, and they try to just beat your, let's say, proposal in terms of the salary, you know, by giving them more. And some people, you know, they are not really dedicated to work with you. They just easily leaving to other banks, you know, as well. Yeah. But this is probably also about creating certain culture, you know. So people need to, let's say, feel themselves as a part of your bank, not as just as an employee, but also as a part of someone who is creating something or investing in the development of not only the company, but also in the financial market of the country in general.
Very good. So I want to come back to this. I just quickly want to go to Francis first, because EBRD has been in this market now for quite some time, in and out, and then back again, and now very heavily involved. So can you explain a little bit the role that you are playing, and if you can focus a little bit also on the challenges and opportunities that we just heard about? Let's say, how can you help address some of those challenges?
We've been indeed out of this market for a while. We had an unhappy annual meeting in Tashkent a few years ago.
About this one.
Which I hope is not repeated with this, you know, this
I
one.
really hope so.
But you know, we heard from the banks. I'd like to start from the ground up, actually, from an experience I had a few years ago. So I'm sure some of you took the opportunity to do some tourism in Samarkand, and maybe the more adventurous took the day yesterday to go to Bukhara. Now, if you have a little bit more time, you can go to another, even more remote city, a few hours drive away from Bukhara, called Khiva, which I highly recommend. It is probably the most beautiful. I bought a beautiful piece of embroidered cloth in Khiva. After I'd chosen and negotiated, half the pleasure is in negotiating, of course, I wanted to pay and I didn't have enough cash. So the owner of the shop had to take me to the entrance of the old city, which was like 20 minutes walk. We didn't find an ATM that would take my card. So then we had to go to a money changer that took the same sort of rip-off commission that you were mentioning in your introduction. And finally I was able to pay her the money that I owed her. It took 45 minutes of her time, time to get back to her shop and so on. How many lost sales? how much time lost for her own life, for her own family, and so on. So why won't she use Mastercard? I guess is the question, right?
So true.
So now, how do we address these challenges? First, we actually do investments. We've invested in Uzbekistan, in, for example, TBC Uzbekistan, which I know is not represented on this panel, and I speak of a competitor of some of the banks here, but TBC Uzbekistan, which is a digital startup, which has grown successfully and is now growing, including in the remote regions, all the way to Kazakhstan in Uzbekistan. We also look at tech opportunities. You mentioned Click and Pay Me. These are things we look at. We're also looking at, we see the example from Kazakhstan, from the growth of marketplaces, the one that you create in Halyk, the Kaspi ecosystem, and so on. And we think that because there's a large and growing population in Uzbekistan, on the contrary to other, perhaps more difficult markets in the region, where that scale is not there, there will be a scope for a Kaspi-like, Halyk-like digital ecosystem in Uzbekistan. So we're looking at that. And finally, we're also looking at exploring, at supporting Sharia compliant platforms. And one name in particular that I'd like to mention, because if you go to the digital award ceremony in about an hour's time, 90 minutes time, you will see them receive an award. The neobank project Tayyab in Kazakhstan has caught our attention for its ambition, its growth, and so they will receive an award in a couple of in about an hour and a half. But that is just the investment. We realize that investment is not enough. That's why we also do policy here in this country, and we're replicating it in Kyrgyzstan. We have developed a remote identification system. Because a lot of the difficulty, when I talk to fintech entrepreneurs about investing in my region, they go country by country and they say, okay, does this country have a remote identification system? Yes, no. If no, the conversation is very short. They are not interested. If yes, then they know they can take strides, they can gain market share, and they are interested, sometimes even in relatively small markets. And we did that in cooperation with the Central Bank of Uzbekistan, and now again we're replicating it in Kyrgyzstan. The other thing we do, specifically for inclusion, is that we realize that it's not just about money. Banks need to get better at overcoming bias. Okay, be it against women entrepreneurs, be it against young entrepreneurs. Bankers are just like the rest of us. All of us have unconscious biases. So we help banks identify and deal with those. And we help banks give training, we were talking about financial literacy, to groups of clients. And that brings another benefit which is quite important, which is the interconnection of the entrepreneurs themselves. Being an entrepreneur is a very lonely activity, and there's only so many hours you can spend with your partner at the dinner table explaining your difficulties of the day before they decide that they've had enough, right? Yes, so talking to other entrepreneurs from time to time brings a lot of relief in terms of being able to get better at their job. And on this note, I can't resist sharing feedback that I got from a young entrepreneur in Serbia a few months ago, where we have a successful young youth in business program. He said, my message to banks is look at us not as a risk, but as an opportunity.
Yes.
And that's exactly our goal, the way that's what's driving our policy.
Very good. So I want to, let's say, double down on the policy aspect of what you mentioned, because Umut called her towards the end of her talk, how relevant regulation is, and really proactive regulation to address, let's say, financial inclusion. So Umid, could you share a little bit with us, in Uzbekistan in particular, are we going about the same way that Umut described in Kazakhstan, really collaborating with the regulators? Help us understand a little bit how we can also, as international partners, help you there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have quite good dialogue with our regulator. We are on a constant basis exchanging ideas, So we have regular meetings when we discuss also the trends and possibilities, risks on the financial area, what needs to be done, And the regulator gives certain ideas for, let's say, kind of consideration to commercial banks. Time by time, they send a letter saying, okay, we are planning to do that or implement certain, let's say, products. How you see that? Give us your feedback, That's a good sign. And banks then, let's say, provide their own view how it should be done on a proper and better way. So this kind of dialogue, I think, helps to avoid any risk, in order to get a much more smooth and, let's say, faster development.
Very good. And I think there are a lot of lessons learned that also many of us in the room, also from the EBRD or the Mastercard team, have helping regulators. We helped, for example, the central bank in Uzbekistan in developing the payments plan. But I think also, Francis, coming to you from our Central Asia perspective, there must be also synergies in policy making you have done in other Central Asian countries that you can probably also import into Uzbekistan, or at least try to leverage with regulators, right?
There are, but I must say we look at this more on a global scale.
Okay.
Say the Women in Business program that we've implemented in this region originated in Turkey.
In Turkey.
So 11 years ago, we signed our first pilot program in Turkey with Guarantee Bank for female entrepreneurs. And it proved to be this combination of funding. Actually, there was a first loss component as well, because in many societies, women do not have the same access to collateral as men. When the inheritance comes, the men get the real estate and the females get the jewelry, for example. And so you can't give the jewelry as collateral in the same way as you can a piece of land, right? So there was a first loss component. We told the banks, don't ask for collateral, we'll pay for the first 10% of the losses. And in fact, something happened which is very interesting, is after a few years, the banks came back and said, we haven't used it. And no kidding. You know what? Women are actually better clients than men on average. Okay?
Exactly.
So, so the banks came back and didn't use it. So, so we said, okay, let's do another round, but instead of 10% first loss, we'll give you 5% first loss so that you continue doing this program. And then this combination of first loss cover, funding, and assistance to the banks and to the entrepreneurs proved to be successful in the Turkish market, and we've replicated it in many other markets now. So it's not just like we're trying to take an idea from Kyrgyzstan and bring it to Kazakhstan or vice versa. We have the benefit of having 36 economies where we invest, from Mongolia to Morocco, and we always strive to bring benefits from one to the other.
That's very powerful. And I don't know, Umut, from your perspective, the one angle we didn't cover, and I'll be interested because you're represented in multi, let's say, countries, is this notion of public-private partnerships. I mean, there's a lot of M&A activity happening, but let's say, is public and private coming together and helping develop an ecosystem like the ones we just talked about? Does this have opportunity here? Do you see a perspective there for more public-private partnerships in this part of the world?
Yes, I think always there is an opportunity to build the partnerships. It's not maybe always M&A, but something like strategic partnerships, and it can be, I don't know, different mutual projects. And we, for example, have big state programs in Kazakhstan with development bank and some development institutions, especially on inclusion of, as you said, for women program, for youth program, when we as a bank could provide funding. But again, as the EBRD just said, Mr. Francis, that they can provide some kind of guarantee on a certain amount, and we would provide lending for either women or startups, for example, or very junior, up to 30 years old entrepreneurs. So these kind of partnerships, they work quite well, and it's a cheap funding. First of all, we as a banks, we do provide our competence. We educate these clients that, okay, there is a state program, you can apply, you can work, and we will help you. We do take risk as well as a banks, so it's, as I said, a good joint programs.
Joint programs, okay. Do you have any experience on those public-private partnerships in this part of the world, Francis? Anything that, let's say, it was working, it's not working?
A lot of the programs we do are, of course, in full cooperation with the authorities, sometimes financed by them as well. The program in Turkey was actually financed by the Turkish government for the first loss component. Often we're financed also by the EU. So, and certainly the notion that the government needs to play a role in financial education. Or, by the way, for that matter, a few months ago we launched a green energy program in Kazakhstan, and the participants all were saying the government must play a part also in green education, making it clear to people that we cannot continue. You're a farmer, you see the impact of climate change on a day-to-day basis. do you really need to continue using coal to heat up your greenhouse in the winter time, or can you move to another type of energy, right? And so the government plays a part through education campaigns, through government programs as well, and we very often partner with such programs. And we're ourselves government funded, so to some extent everything we do with the private sector is a public-private partnership.
Yes, very good.
Well, for example, we just started a big program with the leading party in Kazakhstan. We do provide more than $1 million on an educational program in rural areas. And what we do, we educate people about financial literacy, but it's already another level. The problem in Kazakhstan is that people, because of very easy availability of lending, they take loans, sometimes many loans from different companies, different banks, small fintech companies or microfinance organizations. And they spend this money on parties, weddings, buying iPhone, and
enjoying life.
And the problem is that there is a growth of the indebtedness of population. So we are trying to educate people, okay, yes, there is availability of funds. You have to be careful when you take the loan. You have to understand why you take the loan. Another risk is about these criminals, cyber criminals, when they just make some kind of operations when the people, they provide themselves the PIN codes, the passwords, and then the criminals, they just steal money from bank account. So this is also, we do this kind of educational programs today.
Very good.
So people already know how to open an account and how to take a loan from the bank. Now it's another level when we educate, okay, don't take the loan so easy. You have to think why you need this loan and how you are going to repay it. So,
that's very critical, very critical. Otherwise, people get completely over-indebted. We've seen it in multiple countries. So there's one aspect of financial inclusion which I don't get about Uzbekistan. Okay, please help me. Because I did my Africa tour a few months back, and across Eastern Africa, for example, financial inclusion is all linked to telco players. You have the M-Pesas, the MTNs of the world, the Airtels, and they were the first in rural areas to connect people. Here in this market, I didn't feel so much financial inclusion being driven by telcos. I mean, am I getting it wrong, or is there a different role telcos are playing here? And I don't know if we also have participants from the telco sector in the room to ask a question or comment on this. I would just like, Umid, if you can start, and then perhaps Francis, if you have a point of view of this.
Well, I think it's a complex question, you cannot just simply say yes or no, because we have to make one step back in saying that Uzbekistan started reform recently, it's just 5-6 years ago. And since that time, Uzbekistan need to upgrade many things, also in, let's say, in IT infrastructure, You mentioned about the POS terminals, ATM machines, whatever, It's all need to be brought to the places, Francis brought a very good example of how he tried to make the purchase in Hiva, This is not the first time I hear this kind of stories, It's indeed, tourists are coming to the country places, enjoying the place, and when it comes to pay to, let's say, certain souvenir in the gift shop, they always face some difficulty. Just withdraw the cash or make the transaction. It's, I think it's need to be combination of not only just public work or government work, also some sort of investment needs to be provided. Opportunities to invest needs to be provided to private companies. Government of Uzbekistan made a good step, giving opportunity to fintech companies to develop on the market, which we see now there is good competition, healthy competition, and a lot of progress done. If there will be some opportunities to invest, and so, for other type of companies into, let's say, telecom, to broadband internet, fiber technologies, I think the companies will be easily or eager at least to go and invest and develop infrastructure in that place. I'm talking about private companies, And this is the win-win solution for, let's say, government and for private sector, because out of that, market will benefit,
Correct. Very good.
I think it's important to mention regulation as well. When you look at the development of mobile payments in Africa, the open policies of the regulators in the countries that have been the pioneers are the one single most differentiating factor that has enabled the development, for example, of M-Pesa in Kenya. And I must say, this central bank of Kenya is perhaps the exception rather than the rule. Generally, and I don't want to single out the Uzbek central bank, but regulators have been much, much more cautious and careful about allowing non-banks to develop payment services because they see these payment services essentially as receiving deposits. It's not just transferring money, but it's essentially for the moment of time when you send your money to the other person, that money is actually a deposit in a bank, right? And so regulators have generally insisted that telecom companies get a banking license, and that's not an easy thing to do for a telecom company.
Correct. Very good. So I have a final question for each of you, but before we do this, I want to open it up a little bit to the floor because I promised you questions, and I'd love to have a few questions. Please, the gentleman in front, if you can pass the microphone to the gentleman here in the 4th row.
You just have to move around the room.
Yes, just like this. And then over there.
Yeah, raise your hand again so she finds you.
Perfect. And then there.
This is a question for Umid. In terms of some of the non-traditional financial services that you've been talking about, can you talk about the growth and challenges that you're facing in terms of the life insurance industry?
It's not related to the overall digitalization, or you're just asking about the life insurance itself, yes? As a company, as a services? We have the largest company on the life insurance services in Kazakhstan. And in general, it was established when the private pension system was established in 1998, the private pension funds. And then the life insurance companies, they were providing actuarial services, and that you could buy from your pension accumulation plan, they already through life insurance company, your pension payment system. Unfortunately, in 2015, the state pension system was nationalized through our private pension funds, and now we have the only one state pension fund, and the whole situation on the pension payments and accumulative pension system has changed. But the life insurance companies, they work together with employers and employees. They provide different products to the employer on invalidity,
disability.
Yeah, on disability insurance, on the life insurance as well, coverage. Then the people, they just buy based on themselves different products from life insurance companies, and we, through our application, provide opportunity to buy through the Halyk home bank the different life insurance products. So
very good.
I don't know if I could,
thank you for that.
if I
we have
answer
one question over there, and then we go for the last question over there. We hear you now.
Wow. Yeah, I got it. So thank you for each of you. That was a very great presentation. So the question is this. We talked much about financial inclusion when we talk about the access of people and nation to financial services, right? That's the one side. And the other side is economic development. So what I mean by saying that, once we increase the level of access to financial services, more people get into the loan, right? That level increases. But when people, it's easy to go and purchase the car or mortgage, but when it happens, it's difficult to maintain and to pay back and being consistent to do so. So what is what do you think about how we can develop being financially, I would say, literate and plus financially disciplined to give back those loans that service is increasing, great. And also the banking regulation also is hurt, actually. It's not affordable, as we can say. I think there's a space to work on affordability because rates are very high. So I'm talking about we increase the excess level. It's good. We give the money to people, but when it comes to paying back those loans, what are your thoughts and movements? And I would say, I don't know, maybe plan to increase the level of financial literacy and teach people how to be disciplined to pay back those.
That's a great question. That's a great question, and I think Umut already gave some concrete color to that part, but perhaps, Francis, you could add from your side to address that point.
Well, I think the way we define access to finance, in fact, is in part an answer to that question. Because access to finance does not consist in putting the cash box on the pavement outside the bank and help people help themselves to the cash, right? Access to finance means helping banks lend money responsibly, but expand the scope of people they can lend to responsibly. Okay, how do you assess the revenues of someone? Because no bank will want to lend to anybody without checking their revenue first. Now, of course, in many countries, you have an issue with the level of official revenues. Okay? So that's why a lot of banks will only lend to civil servants or to pensioners and so on, because there you have an official source of revenue. But that's not enough, right? It doesn't help. So banks have developed methods, and it's particularly true with SME lending as well, of really assessing, discussing with the SME owners, how much do you make, how much money what was your best month, what was your worst month in comes to cash flows over the past 3 years and so on. These sorts of basic questions that help banks take a reasoned decision, but say yes more often without taking undue risk. That's the way we look at access to finance, because otherwise, access to finance without looking at capacity to repay has a short shelf life and result in banking casualties.
Correct.
And of course you also need to have the proper creditor rights, protection infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I won't go into that. That would be another hour of discussion. But for me, the access to finance is really about responsible lending, but expanding it. So helping banks go an extra mile while measuring and taking a measured risk.
Very good. Thanks for that.
Can I add something?
Please.
From a technical point of view, I would like to say that most of the banks in Uzbekistan, maybe all of them, they have their own scoring models, where you can easily put, let's say, income and easily assess the monthly volume of monthly repayment someone could bear. Before, when I'm talking about individuals, they were taking microloans, microcredits, and the culture was not to pay. But once their, let's say, name was put in credit bureau as a, let's say, wrongdoers, for instance, but those who did not repay either partly or full, let's say, fully the microloan, and they got, let's say, denial of new, let's say, microloan, they understand that it's not really good for them, to have spoiled their reputation, This is also creating culture or educating people on some financial literacy to be, let's say, kind of honest and to pay in time,
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good. So guys, we are at time and we cannot take another question, but I was really delighted about this panel today because it was exactly how I expected it to be. I have one last question for you guys before I leave you from stage, and please answer in 10 seconds, okay? So when next year, inshallah, we come back together and have a kind of a forum like this where we talk about financial inclusion, what would be the one thing that you would like to see having progressed from where you are today? So let's say in 1 year from now, 12 months, what from your perspective should have changed also in the area that you control in EBRD? I go with Francis first. Okay, so first of all, I'm sure that I want to invite you all to Yerevan next year. This is where the annual meeting is going to be in beautiful Armenia. But one thing I would like to see is actually more development of technology in our region. I think technology is a great enabler of inclusion, and we see too many tech firms interested in the large, rich markets like the US and Western Europe and so on, and I want to see more investment from these firms into our sometimes smaller or more difficult countries. I think it's the price of development of these countries is through that way. Thank you, Francis. Umid?
Well, I have a feedback from the population who are really interested to get access to Google Pay, Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, access. Okay. NFC kind of, let's say, payments,
That's very concrete. I like
Yeah,
it.
I mean, the people are really wonder, they like to have it, but still due to, let's say, legislation, legal framework, the companies cannot start operating that on the side.
And Umut, how about you?
I hope the tariffs will be decreased
Okay.
on international payment systems. But I think, yes, of course, that the further development of regulation and more collaboration between the countries in the region, I hope it will increase.
Perfect, thank you. So on that note, my understanding is that Umut and Umid has the same meaning, it's hope. So
Yes.
it's very hopeful for financial inclusion. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for the audience, and I hope to see you next year again.
Thank you.
Thank you.